My daughter-in-law stood in the living room I had spent 40 years paying for and told me I was not fit for her party. She used my electricity and my furniture, yet demanded I leave to avoid embarrassing her. They saw a frail, 65-year-old widow afraid of a nursing home. They forgot I used to make an entire county hold its breath. Tonight, just one single call will destroy everything they built. My name is Margaret Doyle. I am 65 years old, and I have lived in Maple Ridge, a quiet suburb just outside of Dallas, for more than half my life. People look at me and see a widow with grey hair and comfortable shoes, someone who spends her days tending to rose bushes and her nights watching game shows. They do not see the woman who worked double shifts in the emergency room for 3 decades. They do not see the steel in my spine, my son, Ethan, and his wife, Vanessa. Certainly did not see it. To them, I was just an obstacle in the ranch-style house I had spent 40 years paying off. My husband, Patrick, and I bought this place when the driveway was just gravel. We paid for every brick with sweat and missed sleep. Now, the warm oak furniture Patrick had sanded by hand was gone, shoved into the garage to rot. In its place stood cold, grey sectional sofas and glass tables that looked like they belonged in a dentist's waiting room. Vanessa called it modern minimalism. I called it erasure. That evening, the transformation was complete. A catering van blocked the driveway, unloading trays of tiny, expensive appetizers. String lights draped across the backyard like a glowing spider web. And the street was already filling up with luxury sedans. It was a party to impress Vanessa's real estate clients and Ethan's new investment friends. I stood in the hallway, holding a navy blue dress I had ironed twice, feeling foolish. I stepped into the living room where Vanessa was directing a server. "Vanessa, dear," I started, my voice small. "Do you think this dress is formal enough I could wear the pearls Patrick gave me for our 30th anniversary?" Vanessa spun around, her eyes scanning me from head to toe with a look that was not quite pity and not quite disgust. It was simply cold. "Oh, Margaret," she said, her voice dropping to that sugary tone she used when she wanted to manipulate someone. "Actually, Mom, you don't need to be worried about what to wear tonight." I blinked, confused. "But the guests are arriving in an hour." "That is the thing," she continued, stepping closer but not touching me. "This is really a networking event. It is going to be loud, lots of drinking, very fast-paced. Honestly, you don't need to be present for this. It is a young crowd. You will just make things awkward." I felt the blood drain from my face. I looked past her to Ethan, who was pretending to adjust a stack of napkins on the sideboard. "Ethan," I asked. He did not look me in the eye. He stared at the napkins as if they were the most fascinating things on earth. "Mum, don't take it the wrong way," he mumbled. "It is just, you have been complaining about your joints. We thought you would be more comfortable getting some real rest. It is. For your own good. For my own good." The lie hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Vanessa clapped her hands together, dismissing my pain. "I already called an Uber for you. It will take you to Betty's house near the church." I spoke to her, "and she has the guest room ready. You just sleep there tonight, and we will pick you up tomorrow once the cleaning crew is done." They were evicting me for a party in the house my name was on. "Okay," I whispered, forcing my voice to tremble just enough to satisfy them. If you think that is best." "It is," Vanessa said firmly, already turning back to the caterer. Go grab your bag. The car is 5 minutes away. I turned and walked down the narrow hallway. They had moved me out of the master bedroom 6 months ago, claiming the ensuite bathroom was too dangerous for me, and shoved me into the smallest guest room at the back. I pulled my old canvas tote bag from the closet. My hands were shaking, not from age, but from a rage so cold it burned. I reached for a framed photo of Patrick and me on the nightstand. It slipped from my fingers and hit the carpet with a dull thud. From the kitchen, I heard Vanessa's voice, sharp and annoyed. Did you hear that I told you we should have cleared out that room sooner? All her old junk is just cluttering up the vibe I'm trying to build here. I picked up the photo. Patrick was smiling in the picture, the same smile he had when we signed the mortgage papers 40 years ago. I put it gently into my bag. I put on my old beige cardigan. I walked out of the room. The Uber app on Vanessa's phone notified her that my ride was here. I walked to the front door. Ethan was nowhere to be seen. Vanessa was busy laughing at something a waiter said. I reached for the door handle, but then I stopped. My hand hovered over the light switch on the wall by the entrance. It was a habit born of decades of saving pennies to pay bills. You never leave a room empty with the light on. I flipped the switch. The hallway plunged into shadow. Vanessa did not notice. I opened the front door, let it click shut, but I did not step outside. I stood there in the darkness of the coat closet alcove, my heart hammering against my ribs. The Uber could wait. Betty could wait. Because right then, standing in the dark of my own home, I realized I was done being the nice old lady. I was going to stay, and I was going to listen. I stood frozen in the slice of shadow between the hallway and the kitchen, my hand still resting on the light switch I had just flicked off. Through the crack in the door, the sounds of the catering staff setting up were muffled, but Vanessa's voice cut through the air like a knife. It was missing the sugary coating she had plastered on just moments ago. Thank God. She sighed, the sound sharp and dismissive. I thought she would never leave. Finally got the old bat out of the house for the night. My chest tightened. A physical pain that rivaled the angina scares I used to see in the ER. But it was Ethan's response that made my blood run cold. "Keep your voice down," he hissed, though there was no defense of me in his tone, only anxiety. Did she suspect anything? We need everything to go smooth tonight. The lawyer is getting here at 8, and if the notary is late, this whole thing falls apart. I leaned closer to the doorframe, my breath catching in my throat. A lawyer. At a party. My mind flashed back to nights that felt like a lifetime ago. I remembered sitting in the break room of the county hospital at 3 a.m, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, eating a stale turkey sandwich that tasted like cardboard. I worked the graveyard shift for 25 years. I cleaned bedpans, held the hands of dying strangers, and ruined the discs in my lower spine lifting patients twice my size. Every dollar of overtime went into 2 things, the mortgage on this house and Ethan's tuition. I thought of Patrick. My husband died on the concrete floor of our garage, a wrench still in his hand, his heart giving out before he could finish fixing a neighbor's transmission. He had worked himself to death to keep this roof over our heads. At his funeral, I held a 12-year-old Ethan and promised him that this house would always be his sanctuary. I sent him to that private university in Phoenix, paying tuition bills that made my eyes water, because I wanted him to be better than us. I wanted him to be a man who wore suits, not coveralls. I looked at the man standing in my kitchen now, He was wearing a suit that cost more than my car, and Italian leather sneakers that probably cost a month of my pension. But he was not the man Patrick and I had raised. He was a stranger who could not even look his mother in the eye while he pushed her out the door. The signs had been there, scattered like breadcrumbs I was too blind to see. I remembered how Vanessa would walk through the house with her friends, waving a manicured hand at my oak cabinets. When we finally get the title sorted, "We are gutting this entire kitchen," she would say. Ethan would just stand there, silent, studying his phone. Then there were the phone calls I had overheard Ethan making in the backyard. He spoke in hushed, urgent tones about flipping strategies and hard money loans and liquidity problems. When I asked him about it, he had laughed, patting my shoulder with a condescending smile. "It is just YouTube investment videos. Mom, don't worry your head about it. And the mail." God, how could I have been so stupid for the last 3 months? Whenever a heavy envelope stamped "important" mortgage arrived, Ethan was always the one to bring in the mail, junk mail. "Mom," he would say, tossing it into the recycling bin before I could put on my reading glasses. "I will take care of it so you don't have to stress." In the kitchen, the clinking of wine glasses stopped as Vanessa spoke again, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that carried perfectly to my hiding spot. "Stop worrying. Ethan," she said, "once we get her to sign that power of attorney next week, we won't need to hide the mail anymore. We can use the equity in this house to cover the bridge loan for the business. By the time the bank realizes she didn't authorize it, she will be settled into a long-term care facility. And let's be honest, nobody listens to a senile old woman in a state home. She won't be able to sign anything ever again." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. They were not just embarrassed by me. They were stealing the house. They were planning to leverage 40 years of my sweat and Patrick's sacrifice to pay for their mistakes. And then they were going to lock me away in a facility to keep me quiet. They were banking on me being a feeble, confused old woman. I stepped back into the darkness of the hallway. My hand found the pocket of my cardigan, gripping the small plastic bottle of blood pressure medication. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs, but my mind suddenly cleared. It was the same icy clarity I used to get when a trauma patient was wheeled through the double doors, the moment where panic is replaced by procedure. If they want to play dirty with a nurse who spent 30 years documenting insurance fraud and abuse, I whispered to the empty air, then they have picked the wrong victim. A chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning raced down my spine as I listened to the conversation continuing in the kitchen. I stood in the shadows, my hand tightening around the small orange prescription bottle in my pocket. "What about her heart medication?" Ethan asked. His voice was low, but it lacked genuine concern. It sounded more like a project manager checking off a list of liabilities. "She gets dizzy if she misses a dose. If she faints at the church friend's house, they will call an ambulance, and someone might ask questions." Vanessa laughed, a dry, brittle sound that made my stomach turn. "Let her get dizzy. Honestly, a few days without those pills might actually help us. The more foggy she is, the easier it will be to guide her hand on the signature line. If she is sharp, she reads the fine print. If she is confused, she just does what she is told." I stopped breathing for a second. The betrayal was no longer just about greed or a house. It was about my mind. They did not just want my property. They wanted my sanity. They were banking on me deteriorating, on the world seeing me as a senile old woman who needed her son to take control. If they could make me look incompetent, They could use the law to strip away my rights. They could seek conservatorship. They could take the checkbook, the deed, and my freedom, all under the guise of protecting a mother who could no longer remember to take her pills. I backed away into the deeper shadows of the hallway, my rubber-soled shoes making no sound on the carpet. My grip on the pill bottle was so tight my knuckles turned white. If they want to play dirty with the mind of a nurse who spent 40 years deciphering doctors' handwriting and catching medication errors, I thought, the fear in my chest hardening into a cold, heavy resolve. Then they have chosen the absolutely wrong woman. My mind raced back to the last few years of my career. I did not just hand out painkillers and bandage knees. I worked closely with the hospital social workers on the heartbreaking cases the elderly patients brought in dehydrated, confused, with bed sores and drained bank accounts, usually accompanied by a tearful relative who claimed to love them dearly. I knew how to spot a lie. I knew how to document a bruise. And more importantly, I knew who to call when the story did not add up. A name flashed in my mind like a neon sign. Elena Ruiz. Elena was a spitfire of a woman who worked for the county's Adult Protective Services. She used to come to the ER late at night to interview patients. I remembered one night, sharing a pot of coffee at 3 a.m, when she handed me her personal card. "Margaret," she had said, "you are the sharpest hawk in this building. You see things others miss. If you ever see trouble, or if trouble ever finds you, you call me. I don't care what time it is." A mix of profound pity for the son I had raised and a burning, righteous anger flooded my veins. I was not going to the church friend's house. I was not going to hide. I slipped out the back sliding glass door, moving with the practiced stealth of someone who had learned not to wake sleeping patients. The humid night air hit my face, smelling of jasmine and impending rain. I did not head for the driveway where the Uber was likely waiting. Instead, I ducked under the trellis of wisteria I had planted 20 years ago and unlatched the small wooden gate that connected my yard to my neighbor Gloria's property. Gloria was away visiting her grandchildren in Austin, so her backyard was dark, quiet, and safe. I crouched behind her large oak tree, the rough bark scratching against my arm. From this vantage point, I looked back at my own house. It was glowing with golden light. I could see the silhouettes of people moving inside, laughing, holding wine glasses. The backyard was transforming into a party venue, the string lights twinkling merrily. It looked beautiful. It looked like a stage set for a play about a successful, happy family. But the director had just kicked the lead actress off the set, hoping she would fade into the wings without a fight. I reached into my tote bag and pulled out my old smartphone. The screen had a hairline crack running down the middle, but it still worked perfectly. I opened my contacts list. I scrolled past the cardiologist, past the plumber, past the number for the pharmacy. I stopped at the letter E. Elena Ruiz, APS. My thumb hovered over the call button. I knew what this meant. This wasn't just a phone call. This was a grenade. Once I pulled the pin, I could not put it back. It would blow up the party, blow up Ethan's reputation, and likely destroy my relationship with my son forever. But then I thought of Vanessa's voice saying, "Let her get dizzy." I pressed the green button. The phone pressed against my ear. The silence of the night amplified by the thumping of my heart. Ring, ring. The sound was loud and clear. It was the sound of the end of their party and the beginning of my war. "Margaret, is that you?" Elena's voice came through the speaker, warm but surprised. "It has been, 2 years since the Christmas potluck." Everything all right? I tried to speak, but the first sound that came out was a jagged sob I had been holding back since I stood in that hallway. That single sound was enough. The warmth vanished from Eleanor's voice instantly, replaced by the steel-spined tone I remembered from nights when we had to call the police on abusive relatives in the waiting room. "Margaret, take a breath," she said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming sharp and authoritative. "Tell me exactly where you are." "Are you safe? I am in my neighbor's backyard," I whispered, pressing the phone tighter against my ear as a burst of laughter erupted from my own patio, just 50 feet away. "Elena? They are in my house, Ethan and Vanessa. They threw me out for a party tonight. But I listened. I stayed, and I listened." "What did you hear?" "They are talking about a mortgage," I said, the words tumbling out. "They want to refinance the house. My house. The one Patrick and I paid off 10 years ago. And they talked about my medication," Vanessa said. "She said if I skip my heart pills, I get foggy. And if I am foggy, I am easier to sign papers. They want to put me in a long-term care facility. Eleanor. They want to say I am incompetent." There was a silence on the other end, but it was not empty. It was the sound of a pen scratching furiously against paper. Elena Ruiz was now the head of Adult Protective Services for the county, and I could hear her shifting into gear. "Okay, Margaret. I need you to answer me with yes or no, just like we used to do with the triage forms. Can you do that?" "Yes," I said, my voice steadying. The nurse in me was taking over. "Is your name the only one on the deed to the house?" "Yes." "Patrick left it entirely to me. Who manages your mail?" "Ethan took it over 3 months ago," I answered. He said the font was too small for me to read. He said he was helping. "Has he ever asked you to sign documents that he did not let you read fully, perhaps claiming they were for insurance or utilities?" "Yes," I replied, a cold realization washing over me. "Last month. He said it was an update for the water bill. He held the page down so I could only see the signature line." "And do you have access to your bank accounts right now? Or did you give him joint access?" I admitted, shame coloring my tone. He said it would be easier if he could pick up groceries for me. Elena let out a sharp breath. "Margaret, listen to me. This fits every single marker of financial exploitation in the state of Texas. What you are describing intentionally withholding medication to induce confusion for the purpose of asset seizure is not a family dispute. That is a third-degree felony. It is criminal abuse. Hearing it defined like that, in legal terms, made my knees weak. My son, my little boy, a criminal. "What do I do?" I asked. "They are meeting a lawyer tonight. At the party. Do not go back in there and confront them yet." Elena commanded. "We need to catch them in the lie. We need paper trails. I need to see everything you have. Can you get away tomorrow morning without raising suspicion? I go to church every Sunday at 9. I said. "They usually sleep in." "Good. Do not go to church. Come to the county building. The side entrance on 3rd Street. I will meet you there. Bring your ID, your social security card, and any piece of paper you have hidden away that they haven't shredded. I have a box," I said, thinking of the metal lockbox hidden under my winter coats in the closet. The one place Vanessa never looked because she hated old lady clothes. "I have the original deed. Perfect," Elena said. "I am going to loop in a friend of mine, Ramon Keller. He is the best elder law attorney in the state. He eats guys like Ethan for breakfast. We are going to draft a revocation of any power of attorney they might have forged, and we are going to lock that house down so tight they won't be able to sell a doorknob. Elena, I whispered. Thank you. Save the thanks for when we serve them the papers, she said grimly. Tonight? You stay safe. Act normal. Take your medication. Do not let them see you know anything. We will be waiting for you at 9 o'clock sharp. The line clicked dead. I lowered the phone, staring at the screen. Across the fence, the music at my house turned up louder. I could hear glasses clinking. They were celebrating their future fortune, drinking expensive wine paid for with my savings. But in the silence of the dark garden, I knew something they didn't. The party was over. The investigation had just begun. The next morning, I put on my Sunday best, a floral print dress that Vanessa always said made me look like part of the furniture. I walked into the kitchen where Vanessa was nursing a hangover with a green smoothie. I am going to the early service at St. Jude's, I told her, keeping my voice steady. I will be back in the afternoon. She waved a dismissive hand without looking up from her phone. Fine. Just don't wake Ethan. He is exhausted from planning. I walked out the front door, but I did not head to the church. Instead, I walked 3 blocks to the bus stop on Elm Street. Ethan and Vanessa always assumed I was helpless without their car rides, trapped in the suburbs unless they deigned to drive me. They forgot that for 20 years, before we could afford a second car. I took the number 42 bus to the hospital every single night. I climbed aboard, paid my fare with exact change, and sat near the window, watching the familiar streets blur into the grey concrete of the county administration district. The Office of Adult Protective Services was bathed in harsh fluorescent light that hummed with a low, irritating buzz. I sat at a metal table across from Elena and a man who introduced himself as Ramon Keller. Ramon was a man of few words, with silver hair combed back severely and eyes that seemed to scan through paper to the truth beneath. He did not look like the kind of lawyer you saw on billboards. He looked like the kind you called when you needed to bury a problem permanently. I reached into my oversized handbag and pulled out a manila envelope. My hands trembled slightly as I laid out my life's work on the table, the original deed to the house, the paid-off mortgage satisfaction document from 5 years ago, and a stack of letters from the bank that I had managed to snatch from the mailbox before Ethan got home. Ramon put on a pair of reading glasses and began to sift through the papers. Silence stretched in the room, heavy and suffocating. Finally, he stopped at a crumpled letter from the insurance company. Margaret, Ramon said, his voice slow and deep, like gravel rolling in a mixer. Did you know that Ethan is listed here as the primary contact for your homeowner's policy? And right here, under authorized parties, it says he has authority to make changes to the coverage. He told me he was just helping with the paperwork when I broke my hip last year, I said, feeling a flush of shame heat my neck. He brought papers to the hospital. He said, "Just sign here, Mom, so I can pay the bills while you are in rehab." Ramon slid a document across the table. It was a photocopy of a limited power of attorney, but attached to it were drafts of something much more dangerous. He used that hospital visit to get his foot in the door, Ramon explained, tapping the paper with a pen. But what Elena tells me they were discussing last night, that is the next step. They are preparing a durable power of attorney and a transfer on death deed. If you sign those, or if they can prove you are incompetent enough for a judge to grant them conservatorship, the house is theirs the moment you take your last breath. Or worse, they can dump you in a state facility sell the house to fund their lifestyle, and leave you with nothing. I felt sick. I just wanted to leave him something good. I wanted to leave him a legacy. He does not want a legacy. Margaret, Elena said softly, reaching out to cover my hand with hers. He wants a bank account. Elena then pulled out a clipboard. We need to bulletproof you. Dr. Eris is coming down in 10 minutes. He is going to perform a mini mental state examination. It is a standard cognitive test. We need a medical professional to certify, on paper, today, that you are 100% lucid. That way, if they try to drag you in front of a judge and say you are senile, we can throw this in their faces. I will do it, I said. And there is one more thing, Ramon added. We need to move the asset. As long as the house is in your name, it is a target. I want to set up a revocable living trust today. We transfer the deed into the trust. You will be the sole trustee. But for the beneficiary, if you name Ethan, nothing changes. He just waits. I looked down at my hands. They were wrinkled, the skin thin like paper, but they were the hands that had scrubbed floors and held dying patients. They were strong hands. Make the beneficiary the St. Jude's Children's Hospital Fund, I said, my voice hardening. Just for now, until I decide otherwise. Ramon nodded, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. Excellent choice. That effectively blocks him from using the house as collateral. No bank will lend against a property held in a trust with a charity as the beneficiary without the trustee's explicit, notarized consent. For the next 2 hours, the only sound in the room was the scratching of pens on paper. I took the cognitive test, answering every question with sharp precision. Then came the trust documents. I remembered the hospital bed, the pain medication making the room spin, and Ethan's blurry face shoving papers at me, saying, "Sign here. Mom, it's okay. Not today." I picked up the heavy fountain pen Ramon offered. I read every single line. I checked every clause. I verified every date. When I finally pressed the nib to the paper, I did not sign with the shaky hand of a victim. I signed with the firm, sweeping loops of Margaret Doyle, homeowner. Let them try to take it now, I said, capping the pen with a decisive click. I am ready. I returned home from the county building and deliberately let my feet drag against the pavement as I walked up the driveway. I opened the front door and closed it a little harder than necessary, making sure the heavy thud echoed through the house. When I walked into the living room, I made a show of gripping the banister and rubbing my temples. Oh, goodness. I sighed, letting my voice crack just enough. Those stairs at the church sanctuary made me so dizzy today. I feel like the room is spinning. Vanessa glanced up from her iPad, and for a split second, I saw relief wash over her face. To her, a dizzy mother-in-law was a weak mother-in-law. You should go lie down. Mom, she said, her tone dismissive but satisfied. Don't overexert yourself. I nodded slowly and shuffled toward the hallway, but I stopped just out of sight. I stood there, leaning against the wall, listening as Vanessa turned back to Ethan. Listen, for the party next weekend, the guest list is finalized, she said, her voice dropping to an excited whisper. I have got the real estate broker coming, and more importantly, Leonard is confirmed. He is that private hard money lender I told you about. And the couple from the investment group. They said they are ready to put down a deposit immediately if the title transfer is in motion. My heart hammered against my ribs. They were selling my home out from under me before the ink was even dry on their imaginary paperwork. I took a deep breath and shuffled back into the room, feigning confusion. "Ethan," I asked, blinking rapidly like a confused old woman. "I heard something about a deposit. Are you selling the house?" The room went deadly silent. Ethan looked like a deer caught in headlights, but Vanessa didn't miss a beat. She let out a sharp, condescending laugh. "Oh, Mom, you are hearing things again," she said, shaking her head at Ethan as if to say, "See what I deal with. Nobody is selling anything. It is just networking, business talk. You wouldn't understand the terminology." "Right," Ethan stammered, refusing to meet my eyes. "Just work stuff. Mom, go rest." That night, lying in my small bed, I put on the earbuds connected to my phone. Elena had shown me how to install a recording app that activated whenever it detected voices in the house. I lay there in the dark and listened to the digital evidence of their betrayal. "We need to get her to sign before Saturday." Vanessa's recorded voice hissed in my ear. "Leonard wants to see the deed free and clear." "I am trying," Ethan's voice replied, sounding stressed, "but she is so slow reading everything." 2 days later, Ethan tried again. He came into the kitchen while I was making tea, holding a stack of papers. "Mom, the insurance company sent these updates," he said, sliding them across the counter. "They need a signature today to keep the policy active. I already checked them for you. Just sign here." I squinted at the paper. It was a dense block of text, but I could make out the words, "grant of authority." I patted my pocket, pretending to search for glasses I knew were not there. "Oh, Ethan, my eyes are so blurry this morning," I said, pushing the papers back. "I can't read this tiny print. Tell you what, I will take these down to the CVS on the corner. The nice girl there can photocopy them at 200% size for me. Then I will read them and sign." Ethan snatched the papers back, his face flushing red. "No, I mean, don't bother. It is too much hassle for you. I will just handle it online." He stormed out. I took a sip of my tea, my hand perfectly steady. Vanessa retaliated the next day. I woke up to find my phone wouldn't connect to the internet. When I asked her, she gave me a tight, fake smile. I changed the Wi-Fi password. "Mom," she said, "there are so many scammers targeting seniors online these days. It is for your own protection. You don't really need the internet anyway, do you?" It was a calculated move to isolate me, to cut off my communication with the outside world. She didn't know that my Bible study meetings twice a week were actually strategy sessions in Ramon Keller's office, where we were building a fortress of legal documents that would crush them. The night before the party, Ethan came into my room. He sat on the edge of the bed, smelling of expensive cologne and guilt. "Mum," he started, putting on his best concerned son face. "Vanessa and I have been thinking, with the party being so loud tomorrow, and you feeling so dizzy lately, we found this amazing place. It is like a resort for seniors. We booked you a trial stay for 3 nights, just to see if you like it." He paused, then added, "We used some of the savings you had sitting in the joint account. Since you weren't using the money, we thought you'd want to spend it on your own comfort. They were using my own money to evict me. They were shipping me off to a facility so they could sell my house to a lender named Leonard." I looked at my son. I saw the greed in his eyes, masked by a thin veneer of care. "Okay, Ethan," I said softly, "if you think it is best, I will go." He exhaled, a long sigh of relief. He thought he had won. He thought I would be sitting in a yoga room at a nursing home while he toasted to his new fortune. He had no idea that I wasn't going there to stay. I was going there to wait for my cue. When I walked out that door tomorrow, they would think I was gone. But when I came back, I wouldn't be just his mother. I would be the storm that washed their entire house of cards away. The automatic doors of Maple Breeze Living slid open with a soft whoosh, greeting us with a blast of climate-controlled air that smelled artificially of roasted coffee beans and lavender. Ethan guided me by the elbow, his grip just tight enough to look supportive, but firm enough to be controlling. The lobby was plush, designed to look more like a hotel than a waiting room for the end of life. A young receptionist with a bright, practiced smile looked up from her computer. "Welcome. You must be the check-in for the respite stay," she chirped. Ethan leaned over the counter, flashing his charming business smile. "Yes. This is my mother, Margaret. We are just doing a 3-night trial. She has been having a little trouble at home, forgetfulness, dizzy spells. We just want to make sure she's safe while we handle some house maintenance." I stood silently beside him, clutching my handbag, looking every bit the confused pensioner he wanted me to be. But my eyes darted to a woman sitting in the armchair near the potted ficus, pretending to read a gardening magazine. It was Sarah, one of Elena's junior caseworkers. She was not there to visit a grandma. She was there to witness exactly what Ethan told the staff. "I just need you to initial here regarding her capability for self-care," the receptionist said, sliding a form toward him. Ethan didn't hesitate. He checked the box marked "Assistance Required for Daily Decision-Making." "Okay. Mum," Ethan said, turning to me and patting my shoulder, "I will be back on Sunday to pick you up. Enjoy the relaxation?" He walked out without looking back. I watched through the glass doors as his silver sedan pulled away, merging into the morning traffic. The moment his taillights disappeared, I straightened my posture. The confused squint vanished from my eyes. "Excuse me?" I said to the receptionist, my voice clear and authoritative. "I have a scheduled consultation in the private meeting room. I believe Ms. Ruiz is waiting for me." The receptionist blinked, confused by the sudden change in my demeanor, but pointed down the hall. Inside the small conference room, Elena was already spreading documents out on a round table. Beside her sat a man I hadn't met before, someone with the sharp, weary eyes of a man who had seen too many white-collar crimes. He checked the capability box. "Didn't he?" Elena asked without looking up. "He did," I confirmed, taking a seat. He told them I couldn't make my own decisions. Elena slid a piece of paper toward me. "Well, he is trying to prove that to the bank too. This is an alert from our contact at the regional branch. Ethan submitted a refinancing application yesterday. He used a digital scan of your signature from an old birthday card." I looked at the document. There it was, my name, forged on a loan application for $200,000. "It is currently pending," Elena said. "The bank flagged it because the signature resolution was pixelated. Time is on our side, but not much of it." A cell phone on the table buzzed. Elena put it on speaker. "Ramon, you are on with Margaret." "Good morning." "Margaret." Ramon Keller's voice rasped through the speaker. "I have good news. The county clerk just recorded the deed transfer. Your home is now officially the property of the Doyle Senior Trust. Any document Ethan tries to sign as your power of attorney is now worthless because you, as an individual, no longer own the house. The trust does. and he is not the trustee. So, if the bank processes his loan, I asked, then the bank is liable for fraud, and Ethan is on the hook for grand larceny. Ramon replied with grim satisfaction. The man beside Elena cleared his throat. That is where I come in, Mrs. Doyle. I am Detective Daniel Brooks, Financial Crimes Division. He leaned forward. We have enough for an arrest right now based on the forgery. But Elena tells me you want to do this tonight, at the party. I do, I said firmly. If we arrest him now, it is a quiet misunderstanding. He will spin a story to the neighbors that I am confused. I want the lenders, the investors, and the neighbors to see exactly who he is. I want no place for him to hide the truth. I can have a unit nearby, Detective Brooks said. I will be on site. I have a cover identity set up as a utility technician responding to a report of a power surge. I can be in the backyard, recording everything. I need to get into the house first, I said, a new plan forming in my mind. There are physical papers in his briefcase, the original drafts of the power of attorney he was practicing on. If I can get those, we nail the intent to defraud beyond a shadow of a doubt. How do you get in without being seen? Elena asked. The place will be crawling with caterers. Gloria, I said. My neighbor. Her backyard connects to mine. I have a spare key to her back gate. I pulled out my phone and dialed Gloria's number. She picked up on the second ring. Gloria, it is Margaret, I said. I need a favor. A big one. I need you to leave your back gate unlocked tonight. I am coming home, but I am coming through the garden. 10 minutes later, I walked out of Maple Breeze Living. I did not go out the front where the receptionist could see me. I exited through the rear delivery door, where Detective Brooks's unmarked car was waiting. I was not a frail old woman being tested for a nursing home. I was a mother on her way to take back her life. By 5 o'clock that afternoon, my quiet street in Maple Ridge looked like the valet parking lot for a high-end country club. Shiny black SUVs and silver sedans lined the curb, blocking the mailboxes of neighbors who had lived here since the 80s. The air smelled of expensive hickory smoke from the catered barbecue and the heavy, sweet scent of expensive perfume. Through the hedges of Gloria's garden, I could hear the thumping bass of modern pop music vibrating against the siding of my house. It sounded like a heartbeat, but not the warm, steady rhythm of the home I knew. This was the frantic, shallow pulse of greed. I peered through the wooden slats of the fence. Vanessa was holding court on the patio, wearing a pale yellow cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly Social Security check. She laughed, tossing her hair back, and gestured grandly at the yard. Oh, absolutely, I heard her say to a woman in a business suit. We are just finalizing the paperwork this week. Once the title transfer clears, we are going to tear out that old sunroom and put in a wet bar. It is going to be a complete transformation. My stomach churned. She spoke about erasing my life with the casual confidence of someone who had already won, inside the house, through the window of what used to be my reading room. I saw Ethan. He was pacing back and forth, talking to a heavy-set man in a rumpled suit, Leonard, the hard money lender. Ethan pointed at his laptop screen, his face flushed with excitement. The ROI is huge, Leonard, Ethan was saying, his voice muffled by the glass but audible enough. We gut the interior, update the fixtures, and convert the garage into an Airbnb unit. The market in this zip code is exploding. We just need that bridge loan to start the demo. In the corner of the yard, A man in a blue utility uniform was kneeling by the cable box, seemingly checking the connection. It was Detective Daniel Brooks. He wasn't fixing the cable. He was angling his body so the small camera pinned to his shirt caught every word of Ethan's pitch. He recorded the guests laughing, recorded them joking about how they needed to clear out the dead wood to maximize the property value. It was time. I pulled the hood of my grey sweatshirt up over my head and adjusted the brim of my baseball cap. I looked down at my sneakers, tied tight for speed. I felt ridiculous, like a burglar in my own life, but the anger in my veins kept my hands steady. I slipped through Gloria's back gate, keeping low behind the overgrown azaleas. I reached the back door of the kitchen. The screen door was propped open to let the caterers move in and out. The kitchen was a war zone of trays and dirty dishes. 2 young servers were arguing about napkins, and neither of them looked twice at the old woman in the grey hoodie slipping past the refrigerator. To them, I was invisible. I was just background noise. I moved silently down the hallway, the carpet muffling my footsteps. I reached the study door just as Ethan and Leonard walked out, heading toward the bar. I held my breath, pressing myself into the coat closet alcove until they passed. I will have the papers ready for her to sign tonight, Ethan told Leonard as they walked away. She is so out of it lately. She will sign a menu if I tell her to. I waited 2 seconds, then slipped into the study. The room smelled of Ethan's cologne. His leather briefcase was sitting open on the mahogany desk Patrick had built. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I rifled through the papers. There it was, a thick folder stamped "Confidential." I opened it. Inside were the loan applications, all pending. But underneath those was something that made my blood freeze. It was a draft for a medical power of attorney. It was filled out in Vanessa's handwriting. It gave them the right to make medical decisions for me if I was deemed incapacitated. It gave them the power to put me in a home. It gave them the power to sedate me. I pulled out my phone, my fingers flying as I snapped photo after photo of the documents. I needed proof of the intent. I needed Mom. The voice came from the doorway behind me. It was sharp, shocked, and loud. I froze. I slowly turned around. Ethan stood there, a bottle of wine in his hand, his eyes wide with disbelief and dawning suspicion. He looked from me to the open briefcase, and then at the phone in my hand. The music from the party seemed to stop. The air in the room grew heavy and suffocating. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, stepping into the room. "You are supposed to be at the facility. What are you doing with my papers?" Panic clawed at my throat, but I forced my face to go slack. I let my mouth hang open slightly. I dropped my hand, letting the phone slip into my hoodie pocket. I don't know, I stammered, making my voice tremble. I was looking for the bathroom. The nice man at the front desk said the bathroom was this way. Where am I? Ethan. Why is there so much noise? Ethan stared at me, his eyes narrowing. He was analysing me, trying to decide if I was acting or if his plan had worked better than he thought. He took a threatening step toward me. "Give me the phone. Mom," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You are confused. You shouldn't have a phone." He reached out to grab me. Ding dong. The doorbell rang. Not a polite chime, but a long, urgent, authoritative ring that demanded to be answered. Then came a heavy pounding on the front wood. Fire department police. "Open up immediately." Ethan froze, his hand inches from my arm. He looked at the door, then back at me. but the confused old woman was gone. I stood up straight, looked him dead in the eye, and smiled. "You better go get that, son," I said, my voice ice cold. "I think the party is about to get very interesting." The music died abruptly as the heavy oak door swung open, revealing Vanessa standing there with a frozen, brittle smile. Red and blue emergency lights washed over her pale yellow dress, casting long, frantic shadows across the foyer. A fire marshal stood on the porch, flanked by 2 uniformed officers and Elena. There must be a mistake. Vanessa laughed, though the sound was high and thin. "We didn't call anyone. This is a private party. We are just having a few friends over." The marshal stepped forward, holding a clipboard. "We received an anonymous complaint regarding capacity violations and blocked fire exits. I need to inspect the premises immediately." Before Vanessa could protest, Elena stepped past the marshal and walked straight into the center of the living room. Her heels clicked sharply on the hardwood floor, a sound that cut through the murmurs of the confused guests. "I am looking for Margaret Doyle," Elena announced, her voice projecting to the back of the room. "Is the owner of this property present?" The room went dead silent. Guests exchanged awkward glances. They all knew the story, the poor old woman who had been sent away because she was losing her mind. I stepped out from the hallway shadows. I reached up and pulled the grey baseball cap from my head, letting it drop to the floor. Next came the oversized hoodie, which I unzipped and discarded, revealing my navy blue dress and the pearls Patrick had given me. I stood straight, my chin high, looking at the room full of strangers drinking my wine. "I am right here?" I said. Ethan dropped his wineglass. It shattered on the floor, splashing red liquid onto his expensive sneakers. But he didn't even flinch. He stared at me as if he were seeing a ghost. "Mom," he stammered, his face draining of color. "But I thought you were," the facility said. "You thought I was locked away. I finished for him?" Elena moved to my side, turning to face the room. "I am Elena Ruiz, with County Adult Protective Services. We have opened an active investigation into financial exploitation and elder abuse regarding this household." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Vanessa rushed forward, her hands shaking. "This is ridiculous abuse. We take care of her. She is sick. She doesn't know what she is saying." From the back of the room, the man in the blue utility uniform stepped forward. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a gold badge, hanging it around his neck. "Detective Daniel Brooks, Financial Crimes Division," he said, his voice grim. He walked toward Ethan, holding out a folded paper. "I have a limited search warrant for the Home Office and all financial records contained therein." Ethan looked like he was about to vomit. "Search warrant for what? For evidence of forgery and fraud?" Daniel replied, "We know about the loan application." "Ethan, we know about the scanned signature." I reached into my tote bag and pulled out the folder I had retrieved from the study, along with the crisp new document Ramon had prepared that morning. I walked past my son and handed them to the detective. "You won't have to look far, detective," I said, my voice steady and loud enough for every investor in the room to hear. "Here are the photos of the documents he was hiding, and this is the deed to the house. As of 9 o'clock this morning, this property is no longer in my name. It belongs to the Doyle Senior Trust, of which I am the sole trustee. Any attempt to use it as collateral for a loan is now void." Vanessa shrieked, a sound of pure, unadulterated panic. You can't do that. You are incompetent. She is senile. She doesn't know what she signed. You can't trust her signature. Elena flipped open her notepad, smiling coldly. Thank you for that admission, Mrs. Doyle? Claiming a senior is incompetent while simultaneously trying to have them sign legal documents is a textbook definition of undue influence. And for the record, Margaret scored a perfect 30 out of 30 on her cognitive exam this morning. She is sharper than both of you combined. A man in a grey suit near the fireplace slammed his drink down on a table. It was Mr. Klein, the investor. He marched over to Ethan, his face purple with rage. You told me the title was clear. Klein growled, poking a finger into Ethan's chest. You told me you had power of attorney. You tried to get me to put down $50,000 on a property you don't even control. No. Wait. Leonard, I can explain, Ethan pleaded, backing away. Save it. Klein snapped. My lawyers will be calling you for attempted fraud. The party dissolved into chaos. Guests were grabbing their coats, whispering furiously, trying to distance themselves from the scandal. Daniel stepped between Ethan and the door. Ethan Doyle. Vanessa Doyle, Daniel said, his tone leaving no room for argument. I am freezing all assets related to this property immediately. You both need to come down to the station to answer some questions regarding the documents in this briefcase. I stood in the center of the ruin of their social climb, watching the color leave Vanessa's face. She looked at me, pleading silently. But I just looked back at her with the same cold detachment she had shown me when she tried to erase my existence. Get them out of my house, I said. The harsh white light of the interrogation room buzzed overhead, casting long, sickly shadows on Vanessa's face. She sat across from Detective Brooks, her arms crossed tight against her chest, the expensive yellow dress now wrinkled and stained with sweat. Her public defender sat beside her, looking weary. We did not steal anything, Vanessa shrieked, her voice bouncing off the cinder-block walls. I scanned her signature because she is so slow, she takes forever to read a single page. It was to save her the trouble we were doing her a favor. Detective Brooks did not blink. He simply pressed a button on the digital recorder sitting on the table. Elena stepped forward and placed a transcript next to it. We have the audio recording from inside the home, Elena said, her voice calm and professional. In it, you explicitly state that you hope Margaret forgets her heart medication so she becomes, quote, foggy and easy to manipulate. That is not doing a favor. Mrs. Doyle, that is predatory intent. Vanessa slumped back in her chair, defeated, beside her. Ethan stared at the table, refusing to look at the one-way mirror where he knew I was watching. Eleanor continued, laying out the photos I had taken of the hidden files and the results of my cognitive exam. And here is the medical report from Dr. Aris, taken just hours before the party. Margaret Doyle scored a perfect 30. She is fully competent, which means every document you signed on her behalf today is a deliberate act of forgery. Ramon Keller stepped in, leaning his knuckles on the table. And since the property was transferred into the Doyle Senior Trust this morning, your attempt to secure a loan against it constitutes bank fraud. You tried to mortgage a property that Margaret Doyle, the individual, no longer owned. You tried to rob a ghost. Later, in a small mediation room, I finally sat face to face with my son. The air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and desperation. Ethan looked smaller than I had ever seen him. The arrogance of the party was gone, replaced by the terrified look of a child caught with his hand in the jar. Mom, Please. Ethan whimpered, reaching across the table but stopping short of touching my hand. You can't let them file felony charges. It will ruin my career. I can't go to jail. It was Vanessa. She pushed me. She said we needed the money for the business. I got caught up in it. I was just trying to make you proud of my success. I looked at him. I looked for the little boy I used to carry on my back. I looked for the young man I sent to college with my life savings, but all I saw was a stranger in a suit. You are not trying to make me proud, Ethan, I said, my voice steady and dry. You are trying to make me absent and blaming your wife. That is a coward's way out. You stood in my kitchen and watched me leave. You haven't been on my side for a long time. I turned to the prosecutor. I do not want to put my son in prison just because he does not love me enough. But I want the law to punish financial fraud and elder abuse. If the man who did this is my son, then he deserves the consequences just as much as anyone else. The prosecutor nodded and slid a thick document across the table. Here is the plea deal. Ethan and Vanessa will plead guilty to a lesser charge of attempted financial exploitation. They will serve 3 years of strict probation. They must pay back every cent taken from the joint account, plus legal fees. Legal. And there will be a permanent restraining order regarding your finances and assets. I have one more condition, I said, looking at Ramon. Ramon placed a final addendum on the stack. This states that Ethan and Vanessa waive all future rights to the property, the trust, or any inheritance from Margaret Doyle. They agree that any violation of this agreement or the restraining order will immediately reinstate the felony fraud charges. Ethan's hand shook as he picked up the pen. He looked at me one last time, his eyes wet. Mum, I am sorry. I didn't blink. Sign it. He signed. Vanessa signed, sobbing quietly into her hands as the bailiff collected the papers. Ethan looked up, his voice weak. What will you do now, alone in that big house? I stood up, smoothing the front of my dress. From now on, I am the tenant named Mom, and I don't have to be afraid of being kicked out anymore. I walked out of the station and into the cool night air. An hour later, I was back in my living room. The catering trucks were gone. The music was gone. The house was silent. But it was the silence of ownership. I walked to the garage and pulled out the box Vanessa had hidden away. I took out the framed photo of Patrick and placed it back on the mantelpiece, right where it belonged. I sat in my favorite armchair and picked up the phone. I dialed a number I had saved only yesterday. Elena, I said when she answered. It is Margaret. I just wanted to say thank you. And listen, if you ever have another case, another senior who thinks they are helpless against their own children, give them my number. I am very familiar with how one phone call can change a party and a life. I hung up and looked around my home. The lights were on, and I wasn't going anywhere. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and share your thoughts on whether you think I was too hard on Ethan or if he got exactly what he deserved. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, hit that like button, and smash the hype button to help this video reach more people who need to hear it.